Welcome to the Bullish Drive Podcast, where we explore the realms of faith, mental performance, and personal testimonies through conversations with high-level performers. Join us as we extract valuable insights from their experiences to supercharge your pursuit of peak performance. This is the Bullish Drive Podcast. What's up, guys? It's James, your mental performance coach, and I'm incredibly blessed and excited to officially welcome you to the first season of the Bullish Drive Podcast. Out of all the incredible guests we've had on our show, I thought for our first episode, we should talk about the connection of identity and Olympian athletes. And today's guest is doing some incredible work as he helps Olympians prepare for post-Olympic life and spread awareness about mental health in high performance level athletics. And high-level athletics is a realm that transcends physical abilities. It's a crucible where our very sense of self is forged. And as the legendary Michael Jordan once said, I failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. See, these words encapsulate the notion that personal growth and identity formation often arise from the fires of failure and unwavering perseverance. So where does it begin? Identity starts formulating the moment we are born, from our parents, the individuals around us, the environment we are raised in. How we view and interact with the world isn't initially our own. It's been handed down to us before we begin to explore who we are by ourselves. And this concept is known as identity foreclosure. This is a term psychologists use to describe when someone adopts an identity prematurely without exploring other possibilities. It's akin to putting all of your eggs in one basket. And a study in 2002 reinforces the idea that early specialization in sports can be risky. Athletes who embrace a variety of sports during their formative years are more likely to achieve long-term athletic success. And as our guest today discusses, it is a benefit for young athletes to try many sports. Early specialization can be viewed by future scouts and coaches as opportunities missed. One of the best things we as parents and coaches can encourage is keeping an open mind. And Serena Williams encapsulates this notion beautifully when she says, I always believe I can beat the best, achieve the best. I always see myself in the top position. And her words underscore the importance of keeping an open mind and allowing room for exploration in our athletic journeys. So let's shift gears to another pivotal concept, psychosocial stages of development. And Erik Erikson's theory of industry versus inferiority is one of many stages that we go through as we develop our psychosocial understanding of the world around us. And this framework is particularly relevant to young athletes. Like my own experience, many young athletes shift from park and rec community teams to traveling teams around the age of 4th and 5th grade, so 9 and 10 years, which happens to fall in Erikson's stage of industry versus inferiority. Without going too deep into psychosocial theory, industry is nurtured through exploration and experimentation, and this enables athletes to cultivate competence and a profound sense of accomplishment. Think of it as honing your craft through dedication and practice. Inferiority, on the other hand, comes from comparative failures, a sense of not adding up to those around you, not accomplishing the goals you set out to achieve. And in other words, kids at this stage just want to find what they like to do and be good at it. Olympic gold medalist Simone Biles embodies this idea when she states, I just go out there and do what I love to do, and that's gymnastics. See, her unwavering dedication to her craft exemplifies that industry springs from a genuine passion for the sport. And what's interesting about this stage is that young athletes can begin to develop a theory known as growth mindset. Industry can be seen as a time to develop internal locus of control, and inferiority as external locus of control. But what about control has to do with identity? Well, it's vital in an athlete's journey, impacting their resilience and adaptability in times of hardship. According to Carol Dweck, who's a renowned psychologist in her groundbreaking work, Mindset, the New Psychology of Success, individuals with a growth mindset characterized by an internal locus of control are more likely to embrace challenges and perceive setbacks as opportunities for growth, while those with external locus of control can be trapped, relying too much on factors that are out of their control. Now consider the delicate balance between athletic identity and personal identity. Retired soccer star Abby Wambach wisely notes, we forget that we are more than just our sport. Her journey emphasizes the importance of athletes exploring their interests and passions beyond sports to avoid the perils of identity confusion. And this cannot be more noted than during the teenage and college years of Erikson's stages, known as identity versus identity confusion. During these years, individuals will dive into who they are and how do they fit into the world around them as an individual. A number of other brain occurrences happen as well, such as puberty and a process called pruning. Pruning is as it sounds. The brain begins the process of getting rid of unused neural pathways to make room for ones that are used more often. So for instance, if one has never touched a paintbrush up to this point, the brain will begin to get rid of the connections for painting because it's never been used. Does this mean that the individual can never learn to paint? No, but it will be harder. This process creates opportunities to experiment with identity and is also the reason why teens will try new styles, listen to new music, and explore both positive and negative new situations. It's why athletes will strive to be a varsity player or gain the coveted Letterman's jacket or MVP, why the Sweet 16 parties need to be big and the Winter King and Queen need to be won or the valedictorian is fought over. Can I get into the college I want? Get the scholarship, or even get drafted? So finally, for those who ascend to the professional level, the stakes are raised even higher. Basketball legend Kobe Bryant once said, "I can't relate to lazy people. We just don't speak the same language. I don't understand you. I don't want to understand you." And these words reflect the unwavering dedication demanded at the professional level. Yet, they also illuminate the challenge of transitioning to a life beyond sports when one's identity is so profoundly intertwined with the game. Many athletes at these levels begin to focus on external or extrinsic forms of identity. And as we say at Bullish Drive, outcome focused. Stats, wins, and losses. Will I get a ring this year or will I become a bust? Will I prove the media and critics right or wrong? Will I be on the right side of politics to get to where I want to go or not? The danger of outcome focused identity is that we do not have full control of outcome. Too many factors outside of our control can occur. And when professional athletes struggle to realize this, they experience burnout, anxiety, or even depression. High-level athletics offers a distinctive platform for identity formation, filled with both opportunities and challenges. Navigating this journey necessitates a balance between dedication to the sport and the cultivation of a multifaceted identity that serves athletes well throughout their entire lives. Muhammad Ali, who famously proclaimed, "The man who has no imagination has no wings." Imagination, exploration, and personal growth are the keys to a triumphant athletic journey and a gratifying life beyond the field or the court. With that, I am honored and blessed to have my friend Garrett Bender, former Olympian playing for the U.S. Eagles Sevens rugby team, with us on the show today. What's up, man?
I appreciate you sticking with me, man, making this happen.
Yeah, of course. No, thank
Yeah,
you for being on.
yeah, it's a big soft spot in my heart. Is the mental side of sports aspect. It's honestly mostly because it's something I struggle with a lot during my playing days. So I started on the U.S. team in 2011. Worked my way to first contracts 2012. Was there for 6 months. Took a year and a half off, and then worked my way back on. So from 2013 to the end of 2016, I was there consistently, and I had four different coaches over that four different head coaches over that span. So I had a lot of good coaches and a lot of bad ones, and I feel like I learned and took the bits and pieces from all of them. And then I decided to leave the team in the after the 2016 Olympics because I was in a terrible mental health space. I'd say I was suicidal mostly when I was going through that process. And we can dive into that a little bit more, but it's kind of since then I've been bouncing around all over. Kind of first few years didn't want to be a part of the game at all. I was really abrasive to it. But then I, kind of just started coaching a little bit, and then that's kind of when we met. As one of my first little coaching sessions.
Yeah.
Uh, Back into it, and then just there was always this pull to kind of go back to the sport, whatever that looked like, and I still kind of kept it at arm's length. Became a massage therapist, helped run a couple of massage businesses, and just through that kept having this consistent feeling of rugby, like always being at the back, like because I left, I didn't know why I was leaving. I just knew the way I felt. It wasn't necessarily a sport, but I knew I needed to change something, and I didn't know what that was. And so the last 7 years, I'd say, has been a lot of unboxing what that
Yeah.
has been. And it took a few years to kind of get there to the real work and, understanding our childhood traumas and how that impacts, us as adults, and the habits that we hold on that aren't serving us as adults, they're usually satisfying, something we either got too much of or we didn't get enough of as kids,
Right.
right? And so going through that process, it's helped me to start to unbox a lot of like what I was struggling with. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now is I've kind of dedicated my life to help, others not have to suffer through the same things I had to suffer through,
Mm.
and just help give back in any way I can, and connect people with the most important parts of sports, which
Yeah.
is the brotherhood, the family that you're around, the support system that you're around, the skills that you're developing, through these sports, not just,
Right.
you know, chasing the performance, chasing the wins and losses. Like you're actually developing into a better person all around.
Mm.
But in a nutshell, I'm
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
kind of in a space of doing a lot of self work
Mm.
and also helping others kind of process through the transition out of sport. I think is the main thing I've been working on lately.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, man. I love that. I love just your approach to it and just the self-awareness, right? Just recognizing well where to go with your mental space and what to do with that. Now you actually didn't come from a rugby background. You were a football player, weren't you?
yep, 100%. Yeah, I
Okay.
played football since I was 8 years old. 8 to about 19. Got recruited to go to Division II college, St. Cloud State.
Mm.
I had basically a full ride to go there. Had a great senior season. And I count, I give a lot of gratitude to rugby because of the success I had in football. I wouldn't have been as successful of a rugby or a football player if I hadn't found rugby. I found rugby freshman year of high school. Played baseball since I was, 5 years old up, and because it's a spring sport in Minnesota, I
Mhm.
had to make the decision that my dad wasn't super happy about because baseball is a lot safer. There's a lot more money in
Yeah.
baseball, but he came around eventually. So yeah, I'm a big advocate of if you're playing football, like to have an off season where you're training, you're tackling, and not just tackling, like tackling the safest, most efficient way. That's
Mm.
what rugby teaches. And then if you're a ball carrier, you get a whole nother season of running against guys, using your
Right.
stiff arm, using your footwork, using those things. And it's amazing how many football coaches are super abrasive to rugby,
Yeah.
like and they're it's the fear of getting injured and all that. But if I was to say anything that took my game to the next level, it was certainly finding rugby because it develops all the skills that you want to use in football. You're just more well rounded and you're
Yeah.
fitter, right? Because
Yep.
we're moving constantly. So
Right. Because
yep.
it's nonstop. There's no breaks or anything like that. You mentioned like you were playing baseball and then you kind of shifted and your dad was a little uh what'd you say? You said something about your dad's approach to it or something.
Yeah, he was abrasive. He was very abrasive at first. Because I was a
Yeah.
good baseball player too. That was probably my first true love. Like my brother was a good baseball player, and we grew up. He's 5 years older than me, so we grew up playing. Throwing the ball against the steps like our whole childhood.
Mm.
Working on our grounders, working on our fielding, and some of the best memories are going to the field with my dad and brother, and just like my dad would hit us balls, and one of us play first base, and so yeah, very, it was a, it was an easy decision for me at the time because I found
Mm.
the sport that just clicked. Like
Mm.
first game I played, I was like, yeah, like this game's for me. But
Right.
in hindsight, I'm like, yeah, I wonder what would have happened if I'd have pursued because I love the I love the skill that it takes to play baseball, but I love like the chillness, of
Mm.
baseball where,
Mm.
it's not like staying in a tunnel next to a bunch of dudes that are trying to take your head off. It's
Right.
more just coming out and warming up with your buddies, you're eating seeds, you got the camaraderie on the bench and like all that. So it's very different, like environments, like intensity wise, but
Yeah.
I always got mad respect for baseball.
I know a lot of young athletes around the age of 13, they kind of want to find their thing, and
hmm
sometimes it's not always what their parents want. So, was there anything your dad did that helped you latch on to rugby and football, even though he was more of a baseball guy? Like, how'd your dad support you through that?
Yeah, well, like my dad's always been my biggest fan,
Mm.
so it took him a little bit to come around, but once he saw that I was really passionate about it, and then I was having success with it pretty early too. Like I stood out, on my team, and so that helped a lot. So he saw that I had potential in the sport, and then hearing that it was an Olympic sport definitely helped too. It's trusting your gut.
Mm-hmm.
Like everyone's gonna have an idea and opinion about you. I wish in hindsight I would have like played summer ball or something with baseball just to like keep it going a little bit, because there's a lot of love for that sport,
Yeah.
and like if you can find a way to balance it, especially at a younger age, that's something I don't know if it was a study or there's been more coaches coming out, like college coaches, especially Division I coaches, talking
Mm-hmm.
about like they'd rather see you playing a multitude of sports. We have this body that's just like super resilient. So it's like you might as well try everything. Just trying it, man. Like just because it's another season, you get to be around a whole nother group of people. So you got friends that you're making, you got coaches that you're learning from that are different, like and yeah, I think so. If I was to give any advice, I would say try everything, because you never know what's going to resonate, and you also don't know where your opportunities are going to come from. Like
Yeah.
I played one tournament and I got scouted to go to U16 USA camp. So I went played 2 games of rugby, and then I was at this camp with all these kids that like I was in over my head, but it was a great experience. And that would have never happened if I wouldn't have tried rugby. You have a supportive parental figure in your life that will, they'll see your passion and then they'll become passionate. And that's exactly what happened to my dad. My bedroom was upstairs, so he would leave like anytime, like, Alex Rodriguez signed for $180 million over, he would cut that out and he would put it on my steps.
Oh
And so
man.
I would like, yeah, so I walk up and I'd see these articles of baseball players, like, because he was just trying to like give me that healthy nudge of like, this
Yeah.
sport, it's safer, you're really good at it. Like it all worked out the way it should have.
I was so small in high school, my parents wouldn't let me play football or hockey or anything. And so when I told them I joined the college rugby team, they thought it was something soft. In their first game, my mom almost had a heart attack. So let's fast forward a little bit, moving into the Olympics. What was that transition like? Because I think a lot of athletes are like, oh, the Olympics, that's the gold standard. You want to end up in the Olympics, but not a lot of people quite understand the mental strength and resilience that's required to be truly become an Olympian, because everyone's trying to become an Olympian.
So the best word to describe it was a grind, so
Mm,
that's kind of what you'll hear consistently. Like I've been fortunate enough to work with, a solid group of Olympians transitioning out of sport, all different
mm,
sports, gold medalists to bronze, like all Paralympians and Olympian, it's pretty consistent. Like the grind of it is definitely a big challenge. So it takes something that you love, which is the sport, right? So we fall in love with this sport, and that's why we want to pursue it at the highest level. But
mm,
then when you get to that highest level, that national team or that professional environment, it takes this thing that you love and it turns it into a job,
mm.
right? And then
Yeah.
with that, it becomes work, right? And with work, there's frustration, there's monotony, you got to do the same drills over and over and over and over again. And
Mm,
you wouldn't think that like at the national team we're working on basics, but it's like that's pretty much the majority, like 80% of what we do in training is pass catch stuff, like
yeah.
for rugby, like pass catch stuff and just like tackle technique, breakdown technique, like it's real basic stuff.
Yeah.
You're just drilling it at the highest level. So the figuring out your why is very important. Why do you
Ooh,
want
that's
to be an
good.
Olympian? Because there's going to be, it's the difference between being motivated and being driven, right?
Hmm.
Like, so like motivation is never there when you need it, right? Like
Mm,
you listen to the video, you have the speech from the coach, whatever it was. So there's a peak of like, yeah, let's go. But then as soon as that speech or that thing's done, like you're already on the decline.
oh
So a
shoot.
lot of like these motivational speakers and people talk about you got to be driven, right?
Mm,
Which is like you have to have the discipline and a strong enough why to be able to push through the tough days and the
mm,
monotony that comes with being great. Like it's like you could equate it to any sport or any individual. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant's like they weren't great because they had natural talent, obviously,
mm,
but they had their reputation of like pushing hard in practice
Right.
over and over and over and over and over again,
Mm,
and that's what I feel like separates the good from great. And I think I wasn't prepared for the mental grind as much as
mm,
I wish I was, and understanding what you mentioned at the beginning of the importance of taking care of ourselves off the pitch.
mm,
I think that is a big thing that separates the people that play a few years from the people that play 15.
yeah.
It's, are you doing not just your recovery, right? Like, so your stretches, your ice baths, your, whatever, your prehab, your rehab, like being disciplined with that, but
Mm,
also like, are you utilizing the support around you? So your nutritionist, your psychologist,
mm,
your mental skills coaches, like all of those things add up to this one result, right? And if you're missing some of those things, like you might still accomplish the goal, like myself, like I
mm,
was still able to make the Olympic team, but that experience is shrouded in darkness because of
mm.
the lack of work on the mental side of things, and that, yeah, that's kind of like the biggest part I think I missed, but also like the most important part that I emphasize to players now and
Yeah.
anyone that I'm working with, that is pursuing high level sport. It's like knowing that it's going to be a grind, right? Like it's going to
Mm,
be tough. Like there's not one Olympic athlete that'll talk to you about, like the competition is great. Like, and that's what everyone sees, right? So
yeah.
you see the Instagram, you see the Facebook posts, you see the,
Right.
the traveling
Yeah.
around the world, right? But you don't see the 3 a days, 4 or 5 days a week that it takes to, that your body is just completely destroyed and you're gonna go out and run another 5K in that session, and like still keep, a high level performance day in and
Mm,
day out. And and yeah, and like if you're not taking care of yourself, you're waiting, you're not getting the rewards that you need. You'll grind, grind, grind. Hopefully you'll get to that tournament or that
mm,
game and you'll have success in that game and that gives you that reward. But if you
mm.
get to that tournament in that game after you've just been grinding and not taking care of yourself in other ways, if you don't get that reward, then it's like grind, 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 add more grind, like you're just grinding on top of grinding,
Right.
and
Right.
it's only going to lead one place. It's going to be, you're going to lead to burnout. That's what separates people, is they utilize their support systems to the fullest, and
Mm,
not see themselves as just an athlete. Like you're an athlete and a person. You need to take care of yourself off the field just as much as on it. Tell me this when I'm 22, like I'm just going to tell you, get out of my way, and I'm just going to go to work and
yeah.
like get through it, but
Mm.
at the end of it, it's like, yeah, I made it to the Olympics, but I was suicidal. So I didn't enjoy that experience. It's going to take that sport that you love, it's going to become a job. And then that job is going to breed, it's going to turn into work. And then that
Mm,
work is going to breed resentment. It's going to breed challenges. It's going to breed, all of these thoughts that you never thought would be associated with this thing that you love.
mm.
So you got to have a strong enough why to push through those questions and those moments. It allows me to see that in younger players, and that's a lot where I coach from and teach from.
Do you think a lot of people going into the Olympics or into these higher levels actually have a strong grasp of their why? Or do you think their why is just like, oh, now I'm Olympian or I'm a football player versus like the actual why?
I think a lot of athletes' why is becoming an Olympian. It's getting a
Mm,
gold medal,
yeah.
and there's some crazy stat that like 80% of Olympians go through post-Olympic depression. Whether you're a
Mm,
gold medalist to all bronze to just competing, like
yeah.
there's a natural dip that happens after that because it's this huge show, it's this huge like event. The most challenging part of the Olympics isn't the competition, it's dealing with everything else. Like there's,
Shoot. Yeah.
like you're competing against the same people you competed against all year,
Yeah.
same teams, same
Yeah.
size field, same ball, same everything.
Mm,
It's just now every day you're asking your whole team, everyone's getting interviewed, everyone's getting pulled, your coaches are getting
mm,
interviewed, everyone is messaging you from everywhere, like, and telling you what to think, and they're proud of you and all these things. And so it's like dealing with those distractions can be the
yeah.
most challenging part of that whole experience. But I think that stat of post Olympic depression is that sign that, like, I don't think a lot of athletes understand truly, like, their why outside of sport. For me, a big why now is like I want to be a father, so
Yeah.
a lot of what I think about now, which is crazy, like it's happened in the last few years, like this shift happened, I don't know, you turn 30 and it's just like your brain starts shifting. But a lot of my why now is revolved around like I want to be the best father I can be.
Mm,
So when challenging things do come up, I'm asking myself, well, what if my kid was there? What if my kid saw me
mm,
interact that way or blow up at that person when I shouldn't have or react that way in traffic? Or I want to show my kids like that all of this is possible, and I
mm,
want to show them what a healthy man looks like,
yeah.
and that's something I never had. My why was this is the only thing I had. When I was competing, my why was
Mm,
this is the only thing I had.
yep.
I was like, if I go home, I'll probably end up killing myself. Like I was
Yeah.
in that type of headspace. So
Mm,
I was like very fortunate to have rugby, and it definitely saved my life in more ways than one. But, looking back at that, it's like, yeah, dude, that's not strong enough,
yeah.
like because you're putting your why all in like this very malleable like thing.
Mm,
So
mm,
it's like if you perform well, you have a good training, well, that's a good day. If
yeah.
you got a bad training, that's a bad day. And
Right.
this is like my coaches tried to like get this through to me, it's
Yeah.
like that's the importance of like having hobbies, having your family on the
Mm,
outside, like having that separation from sport while you're in it is just as important, as being like solely focused, like
yeah.
there has to be a balance.
That last 5 minutes was so gold. Like just recognizing your hobbies and balancing your life. Like, you identify yourself with your sport. What happens when your sport goes away? Right?
Yep.
What happens when you fail at your sport? Because you will fail. That's what sports is. 80% of sports isn't going to be fun. You know, you'll enjoy about 20% of it, but the rest is grinding, losing games. I do want to touch a little bit on life after elite sports, so, and you've mentioned it a couple times, the transition. Now it sounds like you made a choice to transition out. Not all athletes do, right? So can you touch on a little bit about that transition, what that was like and how you kind of manage that?
Yeah. Well, it was challenging at first, for sure. I think I transitioned before I wanted to.
Mm,
Because I was 24 when I left the team. So in my head, I'm like, well, I got two more Olympics ahead of me. Like
mm,
I got to figure that whatever this is out and come back to the team. But what happened is I left the team, went back to my home, surrounded myself with a bunch of people that didn't understand what I was going through, and then
mm,
got uncomfortable there. So I went back to my comfort zone. I went back to the team three separate times.
mm,
And every time I was there for a week, 2 weeks, and just it's like going back into the same environment. You're opening the same door, expecting someone else to be on the other side, having not done any of the work on myself that I needed to. You touched on it where, who are you without your sport? Injuries as an athlete, it forces us to be with ourselves without that sport. And that's that version of yourself that you're going to inevitably meet when you transition out of sport, especially a
mm,
sport like rugby. It's inevitable. Our bodies just can't keep up with us. So there's this transition that's going to happen. And
mm,
now I'll give a shout out to a program that I went through called the Pivot Program. So they
mm,
work with Olympic athletes in this transition. So they fly you out to Colorado. It's 4 days of intensive group therapy with the sports psychologist, other psychologists there as well helping. That was like life changing for me, and I did that about a year ago. I went through the program a year ago, and then about a month ago, I was there,
mm,
and I actually got to coach at that program. The number one thing that all of us said, we all feel less alone. Oftentimes, the people who you're going to go back to or that you're around when you do transition into that next career, that next job, they're not going to understand what you went through,
mm,
and that I think is one of the most important parts when you do decide to transition out of sport is creating that network of people. So your teammates, the people who are going through it with you are
mm,
the best resources to talk to when you are getting out of that space. If you have teammates that have transition, talking to them,
That's
like
good.
before you decide those things, because they're going to, tell you what you need to hear, not necessarily what you want to hear. It's like, who are those people that you can call up and they'll tell you the truth, even when it's not what you want to hear. Transitioning out of sport is hard, man, because
Yeah.
you aren't just changing your job, like you have to fundamentally shift your identity, right? When
Mm,
we're elite athletes, I was a rugby player. That's all I saw myself as. When I left
right.
the team, that's all I saw myself as.
Yeah.
So I had no confidence going into any other career
Mm,
because I didn't see all of like the skills that were applicable that I was learning and that I gained from being on that team. I
yeah.
wasn't able to see that,
Yeah.
and part of that is having coaches that emphasize those things to their kids and, like making sure you're pulling it back and doing the work on your own too, to
Yeah.
like have that psychologist or have that therapy, or just even talking to your friend, or your
Mm,
teammate, and just making sure you're good outside of the sport. This quote that I come back to, it's don't deny someone the gift of helping you. So when you're in
mm,
that headspace where we don't want to reach out to people, we don't, often in that negative, when we're conscious, when we're feeling good, like it's like, yeah, I know when I'm feeling low, I need to call this person, right? But when you
mm,
get into that low headspace, everything in you is like fighting you to like make that call.
right.
So a way that I've learned to combat that negative loop is to ask yourself, well, what if that person came to me with the same
Mm,
problem,
yeah.
and how good it would feel for me to be able to help.
Is there a way that someone can get connected to what you're doing?
Hit me up on Instagram. That's always a good one to find me, at Rugby Bender. That's the easiest one. You can, my email is bender.garrett, Garrett at Gmail, explaining who you are and like what the conversation, and then
Mm.
we'll schedule a chat.
And well, there you go, man. Garrett Bender, appreciate your time. Appreciate you coming on here.
Bro, thank you very much for having me on here, and I appreciate what you're doing. This stuff
Absolutely.
it's not the easiest to talk about, but it's the more we have these conversations, the more we normalize this type of communication. And this is the stuff that, it holds so many people back, but we're all struggling through something. We got to be
Absolutely.
able to talk about it and support each other through it.
Yeah, man, I totally agree. And thank you for being on our show today. If you want to learn more, check us out at www.bullishDrive.com. And if you want to reach out to Garrett, you can email him at bender.garrett, GARRETT, at gmail.com, or look him up on Instagram at rugbybender. All right, guys, and I appreciate you. If you want a free way of supporting just what we're doing here and spreading mental performance skills through our podcast, please subscribe and follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, or YouTube. All the platforms will be streaming this podcast, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, guys, and always remember, it starts with you, and your destiny is waiting. Peace.